Cats, cops, and C4. Oh my goodness, Gabriella explains as she witnesses the two-on-two fight between Cenk and Vera against Modin and Milan, with Cenk just shy of the sound barrier as he tries to land a hit on Milan and Vera in her war form, outright wrestling with Modin without using her claws. The fight seems to be in a downright stalemate. All four pause and look at her. She has to ask, "What are you doing?" Venting, "We just barely dodged death, and the woman responsible has dodged us. So we're getting out the frustrated energy." Cenk says, "I mean, sure, we have the know-how to deal with it all, but we've been trained to AC when there's problems and, well, having nothing to do afterwards leaves it all feeling empty." "Savages," Gabriella says with a sniff. "Oh, very nice," Cenk replies. "Now, where is this hero that saved Miss Frost?" Gabriella asks, and Cenk waves cheerfully. She blinks before looking towards Linda, who nods, and Amy gives a single nod. "I see. I apologize for my quick judgment." "So you're the missing Miss Duckett," Cenk states before considering. "I hope you have some kind of weapons training I can't see, because if something like that assassin shows up again..." "I have been considering hiring a bodyguard," Gabriella states, and Cenk frowns. "That might not be enough," Cenk says before gesturing to Amy. "Front and center, kiddo. I just had an idea. All four of us are different kinds of insanely lethal. Let's rub a bit of that off on you. If nothing else, it should give you what you need to run from someone who wants to hurt you." "What?" Amy asks. "That's not entirely appropriate," Gabriella says. "You're her guardian, but not her master. If she wants to learn, she can," Cenk says, and it clinches things. "I do? Miss Frost. I was cut in half, Miss Duckett. Who can I trust if not the person that kept me alive after that?" "The only reason I'm alive?" Amy asks before stepping forward, and Cenk nods. "You know we can't register her for weapons use in station, right? We might technically have the facilities, but we don't have the licenses to grant licenses," Linda says. "Which is why it's going to be some quick and dirty self-defense techniques and tricks," Cenk says. "First, though, is basic enhancement. A lot of people use a trick where they imagine themselves as some kind of super being. We'll start with that, but I'll also tell you how to move past it. It has limits, after all." "And how do you move past it?" Amy asks. "You just learn the feeling of self-enhancement and push on that rather than forcing it into anyone's shape." Milan answers, "Step aside, little brother. I've got this." "You're the empty hand master," Cenk says, stepping to the side. "Wait, isn't that an order of Tret's super fighters, I think?" Amy asks. "That's right. Now remember this sensation," Milan says as she places her hand on Amy's chest, just above the breasts, and focuses. "Feel that?" "Yes, of course." "Good. Hold it," Milan says as she pulls away her right hand and suddenly slams her left into the same spot. There's a slight boom of sound and Amy staggers back. We have some work to do." "She doesn't look hurt, just surprised," Cenk says before Gabriella can say anything. It didn't hurt," Amy says in a baffled tone, "because that is a reinforcement and protective focus. You need to get that down before I teach you anything else. Then I'll show you how to actually breathe," Milan promises. "I know how to breathe." "Do you?" Milan asks, and her words are no louder than usual, but they stagger the younger woman. If you're looking for straight-up combat with Axiom, then Milan is the best kind of teacher you can get. I'm more of an improviser, and you need a solid base for that to be a proper option, Cenk says before gesturing towards Modin, then Vera. Modin here prefers exotic and hard-to-resist techniques that are even harder to learn, and Vera is very much a scrapper that fights as much for the love of fighting as anything else. "Is this really so appropriate for a young lady?" Gabriella asks. "Well, she's been attacked, and whether it's a one-off thing or not, learning martial arts will give her focus and discipline. And if it's not a one-off thing, then it can very much save her life," Cenk says before giving Gabriella a look. "Do you think that what happened will be a one-off thing? That your ward will never be attacked again? Is she so lacking in enemies?" Gabriella begins before thinking. "I'll have to rescind that job inquiry. I'll need to hire something a bit stronger and more focused." "Pardon?" Amy asks. "I was concerned that you might be attacked again, so I sent out an inquiry for bodyguards." A woman to carry a big, frightening weapon in public to keep unfavorable sorts from you. However, it is your choice. Some Crimson Hewers and even empty handmasters can be hired as bodyguards. And if I want to learn to protect myself? Amy asks. You have so many duties already, Miss Frost, Gabriella says in a worried tone. And I won't be able to do any of them if I get killed, Amy says. Amy, please, Gabriella says. If you'll all, excuse me, please. She takes Amy aside. Young madam, this is too soon. You're physically near adulthood, but you've not had a life. You haven't lived yet. I know you're not your mother and I'm no mother for you. But you deserve a chance to have some happiness without throwing yourself into war or being targeted by mad women who only want empty profit with no further end goal than a larger number to their name. But that's not happening, is it? Amy says, and Gabriella hugs her. I'm sorry, I failed you. I was just a maid when I was employed by your mother. That I wasn't ready for the responsibility is no excuse to fail as horrifically as I have. I need you safe. You've only had a few months outside that growth pod, and that's not enough. You need more time to have something other than the implanted lessons of business management, public speaking, and accounting. I had hoped that an afternoon outside would help, but the hug is now returned. Amy doesn't say anything at first. I shouldn't get so involved. I'm your servant, not your... Gabriella begins to pull away and is pulled back. Of course, young madam. So can someone tell me what's actually going on? Modan whispers as he watches the scene. I've got some context clues, but I'd rather not jump to conclusions. A few years ago, the founder and CEO of Frost Enterprises and all its attached and bought-out businesses suddenly died with no heir. No clear line of succession and a big mess where her dead body was. Everyone with a major stake in any one of her companies decided to try and grab for power, and it started a massive legal free-for-all that was only solved a few months ago with a compromise option, Linda says. A clone? Modan asks. Essentially, she was meant to be a backup body for the CEO, Amanda Frost. But since she was instantly dead with no backup by brain, what was put in instead was a lot of know-how on how to run companies, and the many sides agreed to allow her to run the conglomeration in her mother's name. The girl's only been alive and aware for about 2.5 months. A baby in a teenager's body. Wow, Modan mutters. One that now has first-hand knowledge on how it feels to be cut in half and left to die. Cenk says in a stiff and furious tone. A teenager is bad enough as a target as far as innocent civilians go. They have some agency, they might even be able to defend themselves or fight. A baby? Fucking appalling no matter how you look at it. If he ever gets his hands on Miss Big, she's going to become Miss Brutally Beaten to Bits. Well, shit. Then we went into the further clusterfuck as the killer went into a seizure when I ripped off her veil and then her body was burnt to ash by a plasma device, Cenk says. The veil being a cognito hazard? Mind control device, yes. Thankfully, the actual meaning of cognito hazard hasn't been found yet. Could you imagine trying to face something where even the awareness of it causes you harm? I don't want to, Modan says. Wouldn't knowing about the possibility about something that hurts you by knowing about it that scares you make the knowledge of such a thing into one of these cognito hazards? Because fear can be looked at as some kind of damage? Vera asks, and Chunk looks stunned for a moment as Modan goes cross-eyed. Moving on, Cenk says after a moment, and Modan nods. It then led into a greater mess as no less than 4 other parties attacked the police station in a massive free-for-all when we were bringing in the veil. Good grief. So we have potential corporate assassination moving into supervillain smackdowns, and things are just continuing, Madna says before looking towards where Amy and Gabriella are speaking in hushed tones. Looks like they're wrapping up. And you're more or less caught up. You know about the sniper and bombs after. You're having a hell of a day. It's something, Cenk says before grinning. Is it wrong? I kind of hope it ramps up again so I can continue to push myself over and over. I've gone through skills as a hand-to-hand fighter, as a bomb disposal expert, a chemist, an investigator. What about my skills as a gunman or a pilot? Careful now, mean old Murphy might be listening, Modan says in an amused tone. Good. I want the dried-up old hack to see if he's got anywhere near what it takes, Chunk says with his grin going daredevil. Please no. I want to still have a station to work from. Linda says wryly, it's just a superstition, or something used by writers to cover up the fact that they don't know what to do. Modin with a chuckle. Oh, really? So my chanting, what could possibly go wrong, has been in vain? Vera asks and Schenk laughs. Sorry, but yes. Oh, I thought I was getting rewarded today. Vera moans and Schenk pulls her close to kiss her on the forehead. Sorry, Ha says, and she starts mumbling about how good things just never seem to last. Schenk raises an eyebrow at that but lets it slide. So, putting aside that fascinating revelation, do any of you have any amount of insight into what's going on? Linda asked. Aside from the obvious, like the fact that if someone's willing to murder to get something, they're unlikely to give up in a single day, especially if they remain uncaught and untouched. Only that we need to remember the fact that some people are sociopathic enough to use murder as a mere distraction. It's not going to make things easier, but we need to look out for someone trying to backdoor something in the midst of all this distraction, or slip something in somewhere while we're all looking around for the next assassin. If people are looking for killers, then it's very easy for a piece of mail to go missing. Modan says, and Linda stares at him for a moment. He's right, Schenk says. It's not helpful, but it does hammer it home somewhat. Excuse me, Miss Duckett? You mentioned sending out a job request for a bodyguard, right? Has anyone answered it yet? I am uncertain why, the butler asks. I'd like to run a background check on everyone who's answered. If people are willing to try something obvious to get at your ward, then it should go without saying that they're going to be willing to try something subtle, Linda says, and Miss Duckett's eyes widen in absolute horror. She then hands over her communicator. It's all in there for your perusal. If there have been responses, then you'll have them, Gabriella says before sighing. Right as I learn I'm in so far over my head, I learn I cannot trust anyone to pick up the slack. Then in that case, you only have one option, Modan says as he walks up. And that would be better, Modan says, and she gives him an affronted look. You're not good enough? Then be better. Learn more, try harder, try new things and stop doing what doesn't work. If you can't trust someone else to look out for your ward, then get a weapon and learn to do it yourself. I'm just the butler, the head of her serving staff, barely more than an up-jump maid. Is that all you will ever be? What are you doing? Amy asks. I'm asking the question that all undewanted ask themselves. Is this it? Is this as good as you can be? Or can you do more? Modan asks, and Gabriella stares at him. Well? She meets his gaze but has no answer. Not an easy question, but an important one. On that, I can say yes, Gabriella states.